Hi, everyone. Harry here to talk about a stray comment, but a really significant one that is making waves by Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson. She was at a bar association function. You have things like this all the time. And a federal judge in Indiana was asking her certain questions, softball after softball. I've been to these things. And he said, "What keeps you up at night?" And she was candid. She said, "The state of our democracy. The state of our democracy keeps her up at night." Now, they didn't go into anything more, and maybe they both realized that was enough. But that is a kind of a stunning comment. I'm sure it was for the people who were there, and a stunningly candid one. But I think we shouldn't take it as a sort of slip of the tongue. I think it is very much in keeping with what Justice Jackson has been saying in her dissents and what her genuine views have been. And I think they are very much in tune with the moment the way nobody else on the court, and by that I have to include Justices Kagan and Sotomayor. Okay, let's go back again to the big opinion at the end of the term on nationwide injunctions, where Justice Jackson dissented, and Justice Barrett for the Sixth really reached out to dismiss her views and kind of insult them. She contrasted what Jackson was saying with the other dissent, which she said, well, at least that has conventional legal doctrine. And she was suggesting that Jackson was really out there and not even dealing with the law. That was an improper suggestion on Barrett's part. I wrote about this in my Substack yesterday. She made it sound as if their decision was grounded in the Constitution and precedent, which Jackson was ignoring. Absolutely not. It wasn't either. It was a loosey-goosey judgment about the reach of equitable remedies by lower courts. But it just really was a telling moment, and it was one in which Justice Barrett, right, the junior justice, other than Jackson, was sort of tisk and taking her to task. This isn't exactly how justices are supposed to act and write. And it isn't exactly how justices are supposed to act and write, except when they are. Jackson wrote, "This is an existential crisis for our democracy." And why is that? It might not be in a normal setting, but we're not in a normal setting. We are in the under rule by a would-be authoritarian tyrant. And the power that they bestowed on him, the Supreme Court, combined with his willingness to lie, his propensity for trying to aggregate power in any way. You put those two together and you have not just a bad decision, but really a potential existential moment for the whole democracy. I mean, I and many people, respected commentators, have been saying this again and again and again. It's really the genesis of the whole kind of new channel of independent media, the Contrarian, the Bulwark, where people from different ideological orientations are joining to say this is a friggin' serious moment for our democracy. And so Jackson has taken up this mantle, and really, who else would do it? Maybe Sotomayor. But she isn't. She hasn't. Sotomayor has tried, but within the sort of vernacular of Supreme Court justices, to say, boy, this is really out there. This isn't just bad, but super bad. But how has she done that? Saying things like, sadly, or with regret, I dissent. So that's supposed to be seismic within the Supreme Court world, that she doesn't say respectfully, I dissent, as you always do. So that's what it communicates. But it communicates it within the extremely small, rarefied Supreme Court bar. And it doesn't even really communicate what is the big special and existential part of the moment, which is Trump and his proven danger to democracy. So when the Supreme Court decides these cases for him, in another era, we might say they are too pro-executive power. They shouldn't bestow that much power on the executive. What we say today and this week, and need to say if we're patriots, I think, and keeping our eye on the ball, is they are giving this madman, this would-be authoritarian, outsized power, and it honestly could result. Look at January 6th and other kind of strains within his whole ruling coalition. We're talking about the state and of the American experiment, nothing less. So in that sense, she's the youngest, but in that sense, a child shall lead them. I think history will record that this has been a terrible threat to the whole democratic rule, constitutional rule of law. And unless it succeeds, she will have been the one who was there to call it out. And it's you can see that some of the fellow justices are really turned their nose up. And who does she think she is? But I think who she thinks she is a justice who perceives accurately and with total urgency the existential moment that we are in and that the court is abetting, and seeing that it falls to her to say it. Now, she has played this role. For a new justice, she has spoken more on the bench than others, for example. But I've been struck, she has her own take on things, and often she's contributing a whole sort of line of thinking about stuff and argument that everyone else is missing. It may have to do with her many years of experience on a district court and being sort of closer to the real life implications of certain disputes. But she hasn't been shy in that way. Very friendly, very collegial about it, but she's always had that kind of gumption. In addition, by the way, she made one other comment of note at this bar association. She said, "Man, they are a lot more formal than I expected. I thought they'd sort of let their hair down at conference, but in fact, it is a stiff, starchy world, even within the conference parameters. Maybe that's best, but there's, you go around. Not that I've been there. No one's ever been there who isn't a justice, but I have heard you go around the table. People state their views very formally. There's no occasion of like, what are you motherfuckers doing to the Constitution? Nothing like that ever happens, and it maybe should. But so she is the one who's taking the occasion to make it happen, including in opinions and also in pretty formal settings like the bar association. So it's a small kind of comment, a small sort of response. A judge says, "What keeps you up at night?" And she answers truthfully. But you know what? That keeps a lot of people who are concerned about the Constitution up at night. And it's a little bit mind-blowing that it doesn't keep the justices up at night. It doesn't keep the six up at night. What are they thinking about, what they are toying with? Maybe there is a sense that they're trying to avoid sort of planting a flag and having Trump ignore them, and they have to be very, very careful and appease. That's one of the strategies out there. But if that were the case, then it would be wrong of someone like Barrett to just tisk and be schoolmarm to Jackson. She really should be able to understand, yes, Justice Jackson is in lone dissent is making a point that's on all of our minds and she can make. And that's not the tone of the opinion at all. And I think you're going to see, by the way, she will draw more criticism, Jackson will, for this kind of comment. Indeed, this is a little bit frightening to think about, and it was a detail that might have escaped notice. But when Barrett took her to task, Jackson to task, the conservative crowd, including the man who is tasked with, he's the new Leonard Leo, basically helping choose judges. He was triumphant because there had been these recent reports suggesting that Barrett was the new suitor and she was going left. And he said, sometimes, the pressure works. So the idea is that pressure had actually been to rein Barrett back and make her be the solid conservative that in fact she has been this term. But that fight is very apparent in their eyes. And in that fight now, Jackson, the youngest figure, I think of Joan of Arc or A Child Shall Lead Them, is making this call and saying what I think should be in front of everyone's eyes about what is at stake. It's a little hard to know how to do it in an individual case. You can't sort of step back and talk about the whole sweep of the law and the term and Congress's absolute abdication of its role. You're talking in the four corners of the case. But she has adjudged it an urgent time to push on that role. It's not like she's doing, anything completely crazy. She's just making it clear what the stakes are in these cases, in the dissents she's writing. And the stakes are, in her words, existential. I think that assessment is accurate. And I'm very, very far from alone in that assessment. So, Jackson's comment here, including the stray comment at the Bar Association that I'm sure had people talking and really sort of sitting up with alarm, to me is the important contribution that no one else on the court is making, and leave it to the junior justice to have the clarity of vision to scream it out, to call it out, because it needs to be, in fact, screamed out, the fragility of the moment that we are in. Talk to you later. Thanks for tuning in. If you enjoyed this video and other Talking Feds content, please take a second to like and subscribe. Talk to you later.